Hello, my name is David Brokaw, and today we'll be discussing the freedom of religion as it exists in the United States of America. Freedom of religion in the USA comes from the First Amendment of the Constitution, specifically the first little sentence there. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It seems pretty simple and straightforward, but as I'm sure you can guess it's really not. It's been pretty hotly discussed and debated in and out of courts for basically the entirety of the life of the country. To make it easier, we're going to break it into two chunks here. The first, the Establishment Clause. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. This pretty obviously means that, for example, the USA couldn't state tomorrow, everyone has to convert to Mormonism or we're going to deport you. Like, that's pretty clearly unconstitutional. That's obviously not going to happen. That couldn't happen. But as the country developed, this was also interpreted to mean that Congress and other government agencies and government officials could not prefer one religion over the other, or religion over non-religion. They had to be neutral, nonpartisan in terms of religion. I've selected a couple of Supreme Court rulings that I thought were particularly noteworthy in terms of Establishment Clause cases. I tried to stay mostly like current, but I did choose this one, Marsh v. Chambers, even though it was from 1983. Um, Marsh v. Chambers was about the state legislature of Nebraska hiring a chaplain, and then it was brought before the court, is this constitutional? Can they pay someone with Nebraska tax dollars to lead them in prayer before each legislative session? The Supreme Court did hold that that was not a violation of the Establishment Clause because of the United States' unique history. But does that line of thought, does that logic apply in all cases? Does that apply universally? And I would really say that it doesn't. For example, traditionally in our unique history in the United States of America, for many years it was considered perfectly acceptable for a member of a particular race of humans to own a member of another particular race of humans, which we've clearly decided is not constitutional. We've moved past that, and that no longer exists as law. But for now, this stands. Elk Grove Unified School District versus Newdow, 2002, pretty recent. Most of you probably know that the Pledge of Allegiance here in the U.S. has the words "under God" in it. Some of you might not know that they were not always there. Congress added "under God" to the pledge in 1954. Since then, it's been pretty heavily debated. Is that constitutional? Does this violate the Establishment Clause? Lots of cases have been brought before the Supreme Court and other lower courts ever since. Elk Grove USD versus Newdow was not particularly important or noteworthy. I chose it mostly because of this quote that I found from the U.S. Court of Appeals as this case made its way to the Supreme Court. A judge said the following: "A profession that we are a nation under God is identical, for Establishment Clause purposes, to a profession that we are a nation under Jesus, a nation under Vishnu, a nation under Zeus, or a nation under no God, because none of these professions can be neutral with respect to religion." So this judge is saying that under God and under no God mean functionally the same thing, much like a person who is drowning would say, "Help me, I'm underwater," or "Help me, I'm under no water," and functionally mean the same thing. Kitzmiller versus the Dover Area Unified School District, 2005. At the time, Dover Area USD was requiring their science teachers, as they were teaching the theory of evolution in biology, to provide to the students intelligent design as another option, as an alternative to evolution. This one was struck down. That was ruled unconstitutional because intelligent design has pretty clear religious antecedents, as the quote says. It's pretty obviously not science. It has no place in a science classroom. Pleasant Grove versus Summum, or the Church of Summum, 2009. Pleasant Grove City was offered a gift. It was a pretty sizable statue depicting the Ten Commandments. They accepted the gift and they put it on a public park, so it's on public land. So the Church of Summum offers them a similar gift. It's a statue of about the same size, depicting their own religious belief or affiliation. I'm not certain what the statue was. But the Pleasant Grove City actually denied, they refused this gift. And so the Church of Summum took them to court, saying that accepting the Ten Commandments statue but refusing our statue is showing preferential treatment to Christianity over our religion. You can't do that. That's not okay. That violates the Establishment Clause. But the Supreme Court did determine that choosing to accept one gift over the other, choosing to endorse one viewpoint over another, in this case was governmental speech, not pertaining to the Establishment Clause. This was an acceptable thing. So where do we stand right now in terms of the Establishment Clause? Where are some areas that I think we should grow? The first, right now, and I did not know this before I started doing the research for this project, right now there's a man who has the title Chaplain of the United States of America, and I'm paying him, you're paying him, anyone who pays taxes in the USA is paying him to lead each congressional session with a moment of prayer. And I wasn't particularly excited to discover that the money that I was paying my senator to do his job, part of that was going to pay him to pray. That didn't particularly excite me. That's something that I would like to see go away. Now, the second part, those of you who can read faster than I can rant, which quite possibly could be all of you, you're probably thinking that I'm being silly because there is no such thing as a religious test for office in America. We have freedom of religion, but there are 7 states in the USA where I could not be elected or hold public office because of my religious beliefs. Let me rephrase. There are probably 50 states in the USA where I could not be elected because of my religious beliefs. There are 7 with laws on the books preventing me from holding office because of my religious beliefs or lack thereof. So let's move on to the Freedom of Exercise Clause. Congress shall make no law prohibiting the free exercise of religion. It's pretty straightforward, but there clearly has to be some limit somewhere. For example, ancient Mayans used to sacrifice humans in some of their religious sacraments. I obviously could not today say that I was a practitioner of an ancient Mayan religion and start sacrificing my neighbors. That would not be allowed. So there's obviously some limit somewhere, and the courts have been working to find where that line is. So again, I've selected a couple of significant Supreme Court rulings. The first one, Sherbert versus Werner, it's significantly older than a lot of the other cases that I've been discussing, but it was of particular note. Sherbert versus Werner established what they called the Sherbert test, which required that any law, regardless of whether or not it pertained to religion, be placed under strict scrutiny to determine if that law would place a substantial burden on religious persons' ability to practice their religion. Laws would have to be of compelling governmental interest and be very narrowly tailored in order to pass the Sherbert test. And they carried on like this precedent. The Sherbert test held for 27 years before it was determined that putting basically every law through this test was a little excessive. The Church of Lukumi Babalu I versus the City of Hialeah, 2005. The City of Hialeah discovered that this church was planning on moving into their city and immediately passed an ordinance banning ritual animal sacrifice, which is something that this church does perform as part of their religious sacraments. This law was deemed unconstitutional because it was not neutral or generally applicable. The law did not prohibit killing animals for sport or for hunting or for food. It only banned ritual animal sacrifice. It was pretty clearly a ban on the practices of this church, and that's not the way law works in the USA. That's pretty clearly in violation of the Free Exercise Clause. I did choose this case because, again, it had a quote that I found interesting that I would like to share with you by the Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy. He has stated during the deliberation on this case that religious beliefs do not need to be acceptable, logical, consistent, or comprehensible to others in order to merit First Amendment protection. So regardless of how other people feel about your beliefs, they still have to respect that they are protected by the First Amendment. More recently, I chose this case because it was pretty well publicized and very recent, just last year, Burwell versus Hobby Lobby Stores Incorporated. The HHS had issued a mandate on contraceptives. Specifically, in the mandate, there were a few forms of contraceptive that the owners of Hobby Lobby Corporation believed were tantamount to or the same as abortion, such as the so-called morning after pill. And the Supreme Court held that these regulations violated the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993 because they placed an undue burden on Hobby Lobby Inc., which it was determined shared in its primary owner's religious beliefs. And moving on to places that I think the USA could grow in, that particular precedent worried me quite a bit. The idea that a corporation could hold a religious belief. For example, I work for Walmart currently. What if Walmart was determined to have religious beliefs that disagreed with the idea of an organ transplant or blood transfusions, and I was in an accident? Could Walmart select an insurance policy that doesn't cover things like organ transplants or transfusions because of their religious beliefs, and then deny me these things because I work for them? Another thing that I would like to see change in my lifetime. Right now, there exists the RFRA, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, that specifically protects the beliefs of those who have deeply held religious beliefs. There is no such analog. There's no SFRA for people who do not have religious beliefs but have deeply held, genuine secular beliefs. And I feel like there is an imbalance there that I feel could be addressed. And I'm going to step down from my soapbox now. I do want to thank everyone for paying attention for as long as you did and letting me rant about this. On screen now are the sources that I used for this presentation. Wikipedia. I know it's kind of a cop-out to use Wikipedia for anything, but I mostly use them as a springboard from which to find other sources. They led me to the Legal Information Institute, law.cornell.edu, and they were of particular note. Anyone preparing to do their own presentation should definitely take a look at them. And that appears to be all that I have for you. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.